Does your stomach hurt when you're upset? Do you carry tension in your shoulders or lower back? Are you hungry all the time? Welcome to the show. I'm Dr. Nina Savell-Rocklin, psychoanalyst, here to help you turn your subconscious into your superpower. Today, we're exploring body language, but not in the usual sense. As strange as it may sound, your body is talking to you, sending you messages about thoughts, emotions, conflicts hidden in your subconscious mind. The question is, are you listening? We all have physical sensations sometimes. We have headaches, stomach aches, even an unrelenting physical hunger at times. But today, I'm going to help you crack the mind-body code, because by understanding this mind-body connection, you can understand yourself more and it can change your life. Yes, change your life. Okay, your body speaks what your mind cannot say. It really does. You've likely said things like, oh, I feel like my head's going to explode, or, oh, that makes my stomach hurt just thinking about that. Well, these are common phrases that point to a powerful truth, which is that physical sensations are often linked to emotional or psychological conflicts that need our attention. But we often ignore those messages. Instead of seeing a headache or a stomach ache as a signal that something deeper is going on, we just take a Tylenol, we push through, we keep going, whatever. The problem is that the underlying emotional issue doesn't disappear. It gets expressed differently. It gets somatized, meaning your body expresses what your mind cannot. And this idea goes back to Freud, who introduced the idea that repressed emotions and unconscious conflicts could result in physical symptoms. And Freud called this conversion disorder, meaning that emotional trauma or conflict is then converted into physical sensations. And it doesn't have to be trauma. It could be any conflict, any inner conflict. And very important, this is not a conscious process. Your mind and body are connected, and sometimes when emotional pain gets too overwhelming or too difficult to express or recognize, it gets pushed down and translated into some kind of physical discomfort. Now, if you have physical symptoms, like if you have a headache, if you have a stomach ache, it's important to first rule out any organic cause. I'm not talking about all stomach aches, all headaches, all and other symptoms I'm about to talk about. If you're experiencing a headache, stomach pain, or some other form of physical issue, always check with a doctor first to make sure there's no underlying medical reason. But if there's no underlying medical reason, then consider your body might be expressing something through somatization, like Charlotte. Charlotte, she seemed to have it all. She had a successful career, a stable relationship, but she also had these chronic migraines. And she'd been to so many doctors, so many specialists, nothing helped. She had medication. She had Botox in her scalp, like 40 shots of Botox in her head. Ouch. She did everything possible. Nothing worked, ever. And she was aware that these migraines tended to flare up when she was feeling stressed at work, but it wasn't just stress causing these headaches. So here's some psychoanalytic goodness. You ready? Okay, so in the workplace, bosses can register in our minds as parents, and coworkers can register in our minds as siblings, right? We're not conscious of it, but it's just sort of automatic. So we're not conscious of it, but it's just sort of automatic. Charlotte's parents had high expectations from her, and it seemed to her that nothing was ever good enough, and that was really painful for her, right? I just gave you a hint. It was really painful for her. So when she was afraid of not meeting her boss's expectations, it felt like her parents all over again, and that was horrible. Only Charlotte was not conscious of that connection between her boss and her parents consciously, she's only thinking about her job performance. But the intensity of her fear of failure was too much to bear. And so her mind found a way to express that physically. It hurt to think about not being good enough. It was a painful thought. That's why her head hurt. Once Charlotte made the connection and began to address that emotional pain from the past, she stopped experiencing physical pain in the present. Her migraines became less frequent, less intense. Eventually, they went away completely. Amazing, right? That is how powerful our minds can be. I mean, who knew that our bosses could end up feeling like a second set of parents, right? No wonder Charlotte had those migraines. So if you're struggling with unexplained physical symptoms and medical tests don't reveal a clear cause, it might be time to look inward. What emotions might you be avoiding? What emotions, what thoughts might you be suppressing? Your body is probably giving you an important message. It's just up to you to listen. So let's talk about Jack. After a long marriage and a very tough divorce, poor Jack, he was ready to get back out there and start dating. And that's how he put it. He was going to get back out there. And right before his first date, he got a really bad backache. His back went out. And there was absolutely no reason for it. It came on suddenly, just a couple of hours before he was supposed to meet his date. He wasn't like doing any weird exercise. He wasn't bending over. It wasn't nothing. Just all of a sudden, he started to get this really bad back pain. So what was going on? Well, his body was doing two things. First, it shifted his focus from emotional anxiety, dating after all these years, yikes, to physical pain. He didn't feel the anxiety about dating. He felt the backache. And second, the backache gave him an excuse not to go on the date. If he was in too much pain to go out, he didn't have to face the possibility of rejection. So we explored Jack's mixed feelings about dating, and guess what? The back pain began to ease. By addressing that underlying subconscious anxiety, he not only felt better physically, but he also became more open to meeting new people. So he got back out there. Back out there. See what I did there? Oh, this is why I'm not a stand-up comic. Okay. Again, this shows how our body often speaks for our mind, especially when it comes to emotional pain. And think about how this might resonate for you. Have you ever noticed that your body seems to act up when you're dealing with something challenging? Maybe your body is protecting you from something. What is it really saying? So here are some common ways your body speaks for your mind. Headaches, like Charlotte. If you find yourself saying, "Oh, that gives me such a headache," ask yourself, what thoughts or emotions are painful? It's painful to think about. Headaches can signify painful thoughts. Stomach aches. How often have you felt a knot in your stomach when you were anxious or nervous? Our stomach is particularly sensitive to emotions. So if you have some GI issues without an organic cause, it may be a sign that you're not able to digest something that's difficult, like worry or fear, or maybe that something is disgusting to you. Tightness or pressure. Feeling physical tension can be your body's way of expressing emotional pressure. So ask yourself, where in your life do you feel restricted or burdened, pressured? Our bodies can mirror our emotional state. Like Sylvie. Sylvie was always complaining about feeling uncomfortable in her clothes. Her pants were too tight, her shirt felt restrictive, and on the surface, it seemed like a simple fix. Like all she had to do was find clothes that fit her, right? But there is more to the story. Sylvie also felt restricted and uncomfortable in her job. And I wondered if there was something more going on when she talked about feeling uncomfortable. Was there something more than clothes that she was talking about? I wondered if she was talking about something other than clothes when she talked about feeling physically uncomfortable. What about her life was causing her to feel uncomfortable and constricted? What in her world wasn't a good fit? Sylvie, well, she was skeptical. She said, "Dr. Nina, not everything has to have a deeper meaning. Sometimes tight clothes are just tight clothes." And I acknowledge she had a point. Even Freud supposedly said that sometimes a cigar is just a cigar and not always a phallic object. Okay. But still, I said, just humor me. Just think about where in your life you might feel trapped and uncomfortable. Sylvie was a physician, is a physician, and she worked in this demanding Beverly Hills medical practice that was actually not a good fit for her personality. So talking about the tightness of her clothes and feeling constricted by them was a subconscious way of expressing that her job wasn't a good fit. What did she do? She left the Beverly Hills Medical Group. She opened up her own practice, and that was a much better fit for her. And no surprise, all of this feeling of constriction and physically uncomfortable, it all went away. There's also converting emotional pain to physical pain. Let me tell you about Linda. So the night that Linda broke up with her girlfriend, she ate an entire pizza all by herself. And I'm not talking about that child-sized pizza that's like a normal portion for an adult. I am talking about the big, big, big pizza that's made for several adults to share over a meal. Linda ate it all in one night. She wasn't physically hungry, but she was emotionally devastated and empty, by the way. By focusing on the pain in her stomach, Linda turned the emotional pain of the breakup into physical pain. Her body was translating her emotional heartache into physical pain, and it allowed her to avoid that heartache temporarily. So what did Linda have to do? She had to grieve the end of her relationship, which is when she stopped binging. Also, not only was she converting emotional pain into physical pain, when you break up with someone, it leaves a void often. It leaves an emptiness within that we feel as a physical emptiness. And in Linda's case, she filled it with a lot of pizza. And once she grieved and mourned and came to terms with the end of her relationship, she did not feel so empty, and she did not need to do this anymore. Let's talk about another form of communication from our bodies, our minds to our bodies. Hunger, more specifically, how emotional hunger can manifest as physical hunger. When we think about hunger, we usually associate it with a physical need. Your body is telling you it is time to eat. But hunger isn't always about food. Often when we feel physically hungry, and we're not actually physically hungry because we've just, have you ever had the experience of you eat lunch and then 30 minutes later you're starving? You cannot be physically hungry if you had enough lunch. Something else is going on. Often when we feel that, what we're really experiencing is a yearning, an emotional yearning for something, right? And that yearning, any feeling of yearning, is translated into hunger. Think about our expressions, hungry for love, starving for affection, right? Even our language points to this mind-body connection. So our physical hunger for food can actually be a stand-in for any experience of yearning for connection, yearning for love, yearning for comfort, yearning for fulfillment. And I've seen this time and time again in my work as I specialize in eating disorders, specifically binge eating disorder and bulimia. And when someone says, I'm always hungry, what's wrong with me? It's, well, what are you hungry for? What are you really hungry for? Are you seeking food to fill an emotional void? Are you hungry for comfort, connection, relief from stress? So just as physical hunger signals that your body needs nourishment, emotional hunger, which can be felt as physical hunger just to make life extra special, interesting, it signals an unmet need or desire in your life. What are you hungry for? Emotional hunger is about fulfilling something deeper. And when we recognize these yearnings and address them directly, when we cultivate, shall we say, an appetite for life and meet our needs, we stop feeling physically hungry all the time. So ask yourself, what are you truly hungry for? By addressing that emotional hunger, you will find that the need to fill up with food diminishes and goes away. And by the way, here's a phrase I hear all the time. I feel fat. I feel so fat. But you know what? Fat isn't actually a feeling. So what is being said? Tracy was constantly dating. I mean, this woman went on like 3 dates a week. It was like a second job for her. But every date was a disaster. I told her she should write a book. You can't even imagine the disaster that were Tracy's dates, but that's a whole other story. Anyway, all her friends were getting engaged, getting married, and she felt left behind. And she'd often say like, "Oh, I feel so fat today." But when we explored that, since fat is a substance and not an emotion, we discovered that what she really meant by I feel fat is I feel lonely. I feel rejected. I'm afraid I will never find love. I feel like I'm too much, or this is too much, or I can't bear it. So for Tracy, feeling fat was a way to express her fears about being alone, her disappointment with the way her life was unfolding, her emptiness, her not enough satisfaction in her life. And again, once we decoded that, addressed her true concerns, learned new ways of coping, stopped future forecasting, she stopped feeling fat. So if you're listening to this and you're going, yeah, and you're nodding, think about a time you've used the term, I feel fat, or something similar. What was going on in that moment? Were you frustrated, lonely, upset? When we really take a moment and examine our words, we can uncover those hidden subconscious emotions. So as you can see, your body is constantly sending you messages, whether it's through headaches, stomach aches, feeling constricted, pressure, feeling fat, hunger, all of these things we've talked about. The key is to start listening. Ask yourself, what is my body trying to tell me? When you tune into your physical signals and you connect them to your emotional states, your body and your mind will feel better. So if you have a headache, think about what thoughts might be causing that pain. If your stomach is in knots, ask what anxiety or worry you might be holding. If your clothes feel tight or you feel pressure, consider what isn't fitting well in your life. What pressures are you dealing with? These physical sensations aren't just random. They're your body's way of saying, pay attention. If you're hungry all the time, what do you want more of? What are you starving for in your life? By interpreting these signals, you will uncover deeper emotional truths and start addressing what's going on within. That's how you find relief, not just physically, but also emotionally. And that is our show for today. Join me soon for season 2 of Mind Matters. Until then, I am Dr. Nina Savelle Rocklin, reminding you that yes, your mind matters.